He meets us dim and foggy.
So you wanted to have him take you to
Temple of Ostrom?
straight to the temple in the hive?
I mean, we don't really have any like point of reference for anything else other than if you see a scary lady walking on the street, just move to the other side of the road.
There is also the records library where portals are maintained.
Oh yeah, where so like is the I'll ask him, is that records library on the way? Is that something we could find on our way back?
He says that it is, but typically any work you're looking to do inside of the Grand Library is going to take a considerable amount of time. Like, this is something you should probably set aside an entire day for.
Right. I just wanted, like, you could show us on the way. That way,
If we didn't have your guidance in the future.
Yeah, he's happy to point out some of the places on the way. He said you're going to be marching through the Clerk's Ward and into the Hive. The temple you're after sits kind of on the border between the Hive and the Clerk's Ward. So you don't have to go into the worst places of the Hive to get where you're going. In fact, the Temple of Ostrom has a reputation in the Hive as being one of the few sources of clean water. Water, as you can expect, is a major value in Sigil. It's a resource that is in very short supply, and the Temple of Ostrom provides it free of charge.
Seeker, you've got Dispel Magic on tap, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Bellingoth leads you through the Clerk's Ward, and he tells you that he feels like he was born way, way too late to really enjoy the best of Sigil. He says, in the days when my uncle Plabo was a young man, he tells you that the Grand Library and Archives was a place called the Civic Fest Hall. It was a place of... There used to be an organization in Sigil called the Society of Sensation that was devoted to the philosophy of experiencing as much as you possibly could in a lifetime. And that the Civic Fest Hall was a place of merriment and music and drink that had no rivals throughout the multiverse.
So they turned a party hall into a library?
He gives a sad little nod.
What happened?
Such a waste. Oh my god.
Hey, Lucius?
Yes.
In the morning, before we set out, Alex hands you a bag and says, "Here, it's a bag of holding. It's not necessarily permanent, but it might come in handy."
Well, anything that I put in there lose whenever your magic fades?
Only if I'm dead for a week.
Okay.
If you die, we'll take stuff out.
You put your hand in it, and now it's a skeleton hand.
Duly noted.
Surely there's a thing about overloading the senses, though.
He tells you that what is now the Grand Library continues the work of the Civic Fest Hall. They had a magical device called a sensory stone, where one could store an experience, and then if you were a member of the Society of Sensation, you were allowed to go these vast hallways of little private booths where you go in and have the experience recorded in the stone. And these sensory stones are still in Sigil here and there, and it's just now, instead of being like a celebration of experience, they're just kind of dutifully archived away in ranks and files, and people just pay a fee to go, and a lot of times these just reflect records of money changing hands or property being bought and sold in Sigil. A lot of business deals are done this way. So what used to be the center of party culture in Sigil is now the Grand Library and Archives. And as it stands before you, in fact, I believe it's actually on this map here.
The fest hall right here.
Yeah.
Gentrification is a bitch, and even Sigil is not immune to it.
think the lady would step in, but
She did. That is a thing she did.
But Belengot tells you that if you're looking for a particular portal to a particular place, that's the place where you would go. There was once a building that you'll see later on down the road in another 20 or 30 minutes' time. There was a building called the Hall of Records. The Hall of Records this was way back in the before times, again, way before he was born, when Sigillians were expected to pay taxes. And the Hall of Records kept track of who owed what taxes and where the taxes needed to go. And it had every transaction in the city had to go through there. A lot of that information was rolled into the archives in a sensory stone format.
Wait, hold up. Back up a second. You don't pay
Yeah.
taxes? Well, that's why the primes are visiting and not leaving.
Yeah, no kidding. Let me tell you about this tax man
You
we
might
have
say
back
that,
home.
Seeker, but at least in Dunfoss, we have air quality control.
Fair.
Is that what taxes pay for?
Yes.
No, I'm pretty sure not. Like, what?
We have
What
a standing
do you pay
army
taxes
for
for?
legions of the undead who might attack us.
Yeah, what do you guys do about Legions of the Undead?
Oh, he says it's been a long time since he's seen any undead in Sigil.
all right. That's
Including vampires, not just your rank and file skeletons and zombies.
See, this place is sounding more promising by the moment.
He doesn't personally know any vampires.
Okay, fair enough.
So, what is the Hall of Records now?
The Hall of Records was operated by a group of people. I mean, you have to remember, this is going back many, many years now. And he tells you that his Sigillian history is a bit rusty, but there was a group of people, these evil taxation people, were trying to take over the city, predominantly through charging everybody fines and taxes that were unfair and unnecessary, and that the lady dealt with him harshly, and all of their people. And instead of tearing down the Hall of Records, they had one of their own men take over its operation and oversee kind of the liquidation of all of this taxation information, spreading out throughout the city, handing it over to somebody else to archive the data that needed to be archived. He tells you that actually he sits the highest seat in the Sigil Advisory Council, and to this day uses the building that the Hall of Records used to be in as his manse.
Wait,
He sounds like a.
you had an evil guild that was trying to collect all the money, and you let one of the members of that guild deal with the liquidation of all their assets?
But to be fair,
And now he's running the
Town. Yeah, well, he would, wouldn't he?
well, to be fair, you got to remember. To be fair, he's probably not abusing his power because the last person to do that got, I guess, flayed.
He's holding the entire Hall of Records as his manse. Oh, I see the problem here. A manse is like a palace.
What did you think it was?
Oh, I assumed that was why Gus wasn't putting that together.
I'm going to. When we're not in public, I'm going to get you back. Be prepared. My justice will be swift. It will be painful for you, and you will have no room to complain.
And sure enough, in another 20 or 30 minutes or so, you enter an area of town that looks much newer than the rest of the city. And Belengoth points out the manse of Lord Taker. And it's just this large cylindrical tower that rises up. And it looks as though at one point the structure might have been more massive than it was, but a lot of the outlying area has now been built up. This is the first incredibly large structure you've seen in Sigil that didn't have like a courtyard kind of area around it. Instead, the buildings are built directly up to the walls, kind of crowded in.
So what's this guy's name?
Lord Taker.
It's Lord Taker, as I've said.
That's
Lord
the name
Taker.
of a man who's not abusing his power.
Absolutely not.
And he hasn't been flayed yet? Is it like...
He tells you, in truth, Lord Taker is what the people on the streets call him. His proper name, to the best of his knowledge, is Keelian.
Well, that's a stupid name.
Don't let Lord Taker hear you say that.
What's he gonna do? Flay us? Ooh.
He may yet. Tells you he wouldn't want to be an enemy of Lord Taker, that's for sure.
Well, like
I mean-
he's like really old. You're talking about like this happened a really long time ago, so he's probably like a really old man. You could barely
Yeah, he's
move
probably
around.
all crinkly
Yeah, what is he,
and
like a
stuff.
dwarf?
Oh, he's young compared to some of the denizens of Sigil. There are people that have lived in Sigil for 1,000 years or more.
So,
So an elf.
I want to make sure I got this right. All of the records and the taxation and stuff used to be in this building.
Yes.
Was liquidated, took care of all of it. But into that process, the Fest Hall, which used to be about storing experience and stuff, is now all just keeping of like transactional goings on and everything. Have I got this right?
He imagines all the sensory experiences are still there somewhere. There's still a need for Sigillians to be able to experience things from beyond the planes that are not practical to do on their own.
Just tucked away in storms
Just-
and whatnot.
You can't do that and then immediately get a martini, if you take my meaning.
Oh, that's a good point. Is that library also where we would go to look up, like, people, places, that sort of thing? Because we have this prior job, and we heard that the person we're looking into might have passed through the area.
He says it depends on the people and the place. He doesn't
what-
spend a lot of time in the Grand Library, so a lot of
Are there any
details.
other places, then? Like, any other libraries?
He tells you there are countless libraries in Sigil, depending on the topic that strikes your interest.
Can I get a martini in any of them? This seems like the greatest, like, tragedy of all time to me.
I gotta say, this seems like a business opportunity. If more people in the city think the same way that you do, you should be starting up your martini library.
And he laughs and he tells you that if more people in the city thought the way he did, he wouldn't be taking jobs like, no offense, escorting a bunch of primes around the city for a day.
Yeah, none taken.
Yeah.
We're paid pretty well.
I mean,
I would take this job.
We've already
everybody's
got
got it.
one.
Everybody's got to get the bread. I know what you're laughing. It wasn't a reference to that.
Sure.
Okay, so you guys don't have taxes. Your laws seem to... You don't have laws. You have guidance provided at the time of infraction by the lady. So I take it it's not illegal or controlled to buy and sell magic here? Like, say I had a magic item I wanted to buy or sell?
He doesn't see why not.
Might be worth making a note of that.
Yeah, maybe we could
Sorry, back home that's tightly controlled.
Yeah.
hit this place up for some... I mean, I've got a spell. It might be pretty good.
I'm just thinking we could finally get rid of that Pike of Infernal Wounds.
I forgot we had that thing.
At this point in the conversation, you do start to enter an area of the town that looks much more slum-like. And the crowds are much thicker here, and there are much larger areas of the cobblestone streets that have been torn up or worn away. You're sloshing through larger and larger mud puddles. Belagoth tells you to keep a close hand on your pocketbook while in the hive.
Mm-hmm.
It tells you it's actually been a long time since he's had cause to visit the Temple of Osprey, but there's an old family story that he heard when he was young that apparently there was a time when some members of the Middlebob clan were in some kind of ridiculous race with the woman who founded this temple. And he doesn't know a lot of the details, and the details that he's been told, he expects are not true.
What kind of details? What makes it so ridiculous?
Did you win?
What kind of race was it?
What was the prize?
He tells you that it was a race across the plains, and to hear his family tell it, the prize was all the known stories, which the Middlebobs decided was not worth owning. It would not have assisted in their industry to control all the known stories. And so they forfeited the race and let some other teams win.
Sounds like a fable.
Yeah.
Sounds like to me that your family lost and they just wanted to make it sound like oh, we don't need that. It's fine, you can have it.
Secret elbows, Gus.
Yeah.
Say that loud.
Lucius elbows on the other side.
And your elbows hurt because he's wearing goddamn plate armor that you made for him? That was stupid.
Seeker elbows him, hurts his elbow, and then glares at Gus like it was his fault.
Yeah, it is Gustavus' fault.
Here's what I want you guys to do, okay? I know McDohl can do this because he can make his husband do this. Like, have your man, like, strap, like, the biggest, like, a walk to his chest. You own a walk, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, just have him put that on, and then elbow the middle of the walk, and let me know how that goes for you.
Elbowing Gus has been replaced with the strong shove.
Yeah.
Again, you're like 2 feet tall, and I'm.
You come to a
plate mail,
place
so I don't think...
where the crowd is very dense, to the point where you'd have to start muscling through people. At this point, you've left one of the streets, and there is a building on the other side of the crowd. The crowd is pushing in towards this building, and you hear calling out from behind. It sounds like the same line repeated in many different languages over and over again, and then starting back. A young man's voice. 10 drops at a time. Don't crowd. Don't shove. Enough for all. 10 drops at a time. Don't crowd. Don't shove. Enough for all. He repeats it, and you guys pick it up in your common tongue, and perhaps here and there in, I don't know what other planner languages you might even have a chance of knowing.
Infernal.
Oh, yeah, good call. Infernal for sure.
Alex is going to jump on top of Scrappy at this point once the crowd gets that thick.
Okay. And it's not a rambunctious crowd. It's not... they're not agitated or lively. It's just whoever's doing the calling is giving something at the front of the crowd that everybody here is hoping to get. So there's a good 100 or so people crowded up here. Bellingoff tells you that the temple is here. And he asks if his services are still going to be required.
Could we contact you magically?
He tells you that he'll find... Surely there's a tavern nearby that he can find to put up his feet while you do your business in the temple. He tells you by his reckoning you still have him for another 4 hours.
Fair enough.
Cool. Well, I guess we could reach out with sending if we really need
That's
you.
what Lucius was asking. If we could contact you magically.
He nods.
Okay.
He goes to find him a drop of something.
Gus looks longingly in the direction he's going because he also could use it. He's still depressed about the fact that the party hall became a government library. I'm so depressed about that.
They don't have to pay taxes, so you take the good with the bad, right? I think that's one of my favorite parts of Faction War at the end, where they describe that, well, it turns out they were collecting all those taxes, but not actually doing anything with them. They weren't actually necessary to running the city. The city gets on fine without it.
It's just sitting in a pile. It's big old Scrooge. This is a Scrooge McDuck money bin, is what it is.
Yeah, no, where do you think Keelian is right now, honestly?
So
that would be a Keelian thing.
I don't.
Build the money.
I think Keely would be too smart because he'd look at he's like, if I dive into that, I'm just gonna break my neck. Like it's not gonna be like water. That's ridiculous. Liberation's the one who would dive in.
I mean, let's be honest, yeah.
Triple Salchow backlit jackknife 720.
360 no scope.
So the crowd starts. People are leaving the front now and then. What's your guys' demeanor? Like, are you going to wait patiently? Are you going to muscle through, climb over them?
Is it like a line that's moving?
No, it's just a mass of people kind of coming to a particular point somewhere at the front, and you see people leaving from that area, going off in all directions. But they're definitely not
Does this
forming a
surround
line.
the entire temple, or
Yeah, can we go around the side towards the entrance of the temple?
Oh, there's a wall around the temple courtyard. It's the gate in the center of this wall going into the temple that the people are meeting at.
I think the idea is we're trying to move in such a way that we're not entering the queue for water, but we still have business at the temple. I think that's what we're right.
Yeah, because presumably they have an acolyte doing this. They wouldn't make the head of the temple do it.
So you guys are going to try to move your way through the crowd to get up to the gate to make inquiries
Yeah.
about other business? Okay.
Yeah.
And you find that the crowd here is not, I mean, it's fairly pliable. You're able to move your way through as long as you move slowly and don't put your elbows in anybody's plate mail.
Sure.
Getting up to where the gate is, you see that the gate stands open, and it's opened inward. Too large. At first, you think they're wrought iron gates that have been painted, but as you move closer, you start to feel the air around get cooler and cooler, and you realize that what you thought were metal bars are made out of ice and are radiating a coolness into the air. A man wearing acolyte's robes. Well, I say a man. He's actually like a goat man. Like a centaur, except a goat. Right?
Sure.
Okay.
That's ridiculous.
Isn't the first one of these creatures that you've seen in Sigil. You've seen them fairly large numbers, actually. They seem to be, if we were to put a number on it, I would say you've probably seen as many of these on the streets of Sigil as you would see in proportion, like a number of dwarves in Dunfoss. So a sizable chunk of the population.
Maybe they're native to here.
But he's got acolyte's robes. Well, acolyte's, saddlebags, draped over his hindquarters. And you can see that he's drawing liquid water off of these gates and then dispensing it into bowls and cups and other receptacles that the people are bringing up to him. Just a little bit, small quantity at a time. A gulp here for each person to come up and receive. And a much, much larger man with bright orange skin, wearing an eye patch over a badly scarred side of his face. He too is wearing robes, and you can see the similarities in the robes with the iconography and the colors held in importance by the Temple of Osprim. But this is definitely a different temple with a different history. And this is the man that's calling out. No pushing, no shoving, 10 drops at a time, enough for everyone, repeatedly.
Can we make our way up to the one who's not shouting?
The one who's filling the cups?
Yeah.
Okay. You make your way up to the goat man who's filling the cups. And, I mean, when you do, he asks you to present your cup.
And I say, we're here to see Yashnars. Should we go through the gate?
Here to see Yashnars on what business? As he's serving the person behind you with a woman holding out her cup.
We're on a mission from the High Priest of Osprim.
of Trennis?
Yeah, one of the High Priests of Osprim.
Oh, Primes, are you?
Yes.
Yes.
He nods over to... Looking, now that you're standing at the gate, you can see the temple proper sitting 20 or 30 yards away from you. So there's a sizable courtyard between the gate where you're standing and the building. Off to your right-hand side, there's a much smaller building with a secured locked door on the front of it, and to the side of it, a small window. Again, it's barred with some of these icy metal bars. He tells you can dispense with your weapons there, and the temple will admit you. And then he goes right back to the line.
Real quick, how many primes are there?
How many primes?
How many High Priests of Osprey?
You only know of the one.
Alright, this is Seeker trying to ask the goat man.
And he tells you, in truth, there aren't any.
Well, alright. Seeker just at this point is so dejected with dealing with Osprey people that he just accepts that. Goes over to turn in his stuff.
Man, you and me both. I'm so sick of Osprey.
Alex is gonna go over there, get off Scrappy, get behind Scrappy, drop his gun into his bag, and put his warhammer into the crate. Trying to do that without getting noticed.
So you're going up to the building where you were told to dispense with your weapons?
Yeah.
Okay. There's another acolyte in there, actually. A small young woman. And her features are very distinctly Sylvan, but she doesn't look like any elf or half-elf that you know. Sylvan in a much more kind of elemental sense. And she does. When you approach, she asks to hand over weapons, spell focus, and other instruments of war.
Lucius leans into Connor and says, "Behave yourself."
Yeah, Alex has put his gun in his bag of holding,
Okay.
but okay, so you actually want my spell focuses? He kind of grimaces at that and starts unloading toolkit after toolkit into this box.
And she just has this very detached, like, yeah, I've seen all this before kind of demeanor to her. You are not the first artificer to roll up in here with a cart full of wrenches and screwdrivers and loops of wire.
Here, Connor, how about you give your stuff to me and I'll put a tag on it so we can make sure we get it back.
All right. Connor hands over his bow
Uh-huh.
and his quiver.
Okay.
Seeker takes it and brings it over to the window. He does not cast any sort of spell because that would be ridiculous. And he passes it over along with his arcane focus.
She asks...
So Alex hands over everything except his bag of holding, which is just a bag of holding, which has a gun in it, and his ring.
Okay. And she kind of asks nonchalantly as she's collecting this arsenal that Flumph Inc. is passing through her window, whether you have any summonables.
Summonables? What does that mean?
Anything created to hand or recalled.
Oh, Lucius snaps his fingers and his little weasel companion, his familiar, pops out. Right? How does that work?
She's not impressed if that's what you were.
Or do you mean
I have a familiar as well.
Or is she asking about familiars in particular?
She asks if you have any summonables, any weapons that can be created to hand or recalled.
Yeah.
Oh, my weapons can be summoned.
She pays special attention to them, where she has a loop of thick red twine that she wraps around the handle of the halberd and ties it in place before she collects it.
You don't mind if I...
Seeing all of this, Alex will sigh, take his bag of holding, and hand it over.
And she takes the bag.
It's larger on the inside, obviously. It has a bunch of stuff in it.
She nods, and she collects it.
Can I bring my companion with me? And I'll pat Scrappy.
And she nods to your companion and to Lucius's companion. She seems like she's just going through the motions. She's not really giving you guys the rundown. She's not going to send the guys out to pat you down. She doesn't seem concerned that you didn't hand over the bag at first.
Well, seeing that she's actually doing a better... I was worried about the place we were in not getting my gun back, but seeing that there's someone here who's actually responsible, they can have that bag.
Okay.
They have that nice twine, and it's impressive.
So what weapons are you guys keeping, if any?
None.
Alex has an infused ring, which you can use as a spell component in a pinch, and nothing else.
Okay.
I have a bunch of stuff that could be dangerous because I know animate objects, which has no, like, I don't need a spell focus for that.
Okay.
And a 700-pound mechanical giant badger.
Yeah, there's literally no way for me to disarm myself from animate objects though without getting naked, and then I'd still have the church.
And nobody wants to see that.
Yeah.
Nobody. It was canonical because of silly in-jokes and being 20 years old and dumb that I won't get into here, but it was canonical in 2nd edition D&D through a couple campaigns that the butt crack on a gnome is horizontal.
Why?
We're just going to leave it at that. Gnomes have vertically stacked buttocks instead of side to side as men do.
Sure.
Yeah, okay. Moving on.
That was definitely vitally required information, yes.
Nodal was threatening to get naked. I feel like I had to put it out there. Gnome butts are just, nobody wants to see them. The worst butts. Anything else you're doing out in the courtyard before you're heading inside?
No, I think we're good there. I think we can just move on.
Okay. The courtyard itself, it looks like they've taken some pains to try to do landscaping that just hasn't taken. I mean, you guys entered Sigil through the grand gardens at the High Temple in Blue Worm. And the idea of like water giving vibrance and life to flowers and grasses and trees and whatnot is a major element of followers of Osprey back where you're from. It's not really taking hold here. There's a circle of stones in one part of the courtyard where there's kind of just a sad little gray stump where at one point a tree might have stood. And the temple itself, it's this squashed, cramped building, just like everything else in Sigil. It looks like a miniature recreation of the grand cathedral from back home. So
Seeker's sad frown just gets bigger.
I don't know. I like this.
Well, he turns towards Gus and then nods towards like the sad tree in the corner and then says, "Does this look like the place that has a major relic dedicated to Osprey inside of it?"
I don't know. I mean, like, if you were trying to hide a relic dedicated to Osprey, where would you put it?
As far as I can tell, priests are incapable of hiding anything.
In this city, I couldn't expect this place to look any better.
I mean, the staff of, I mean, the high priest of Osprey and Blue Worm staff, like that's been hidden for you know years and years.
It was stolen because they did a bad job of hiding it.
That's actually probably true. But I mean, like, no, but seriously, like I like this temple is like in my mind like way better than the other one because that other it was just I don't know, kind of
Too
pretentious.
stodgy?
Yeah, kind of pretentious.
You mark my words. We're getting in there. We're getting a quest. We're getting another quest. We're getting stacked quests.
You need to quit asking gods for quests. It is a problem, and we need to have an like.
All right, to be clear, I have never asked for a quest. I was propositioned. Every god wants a piece of this.
And with respect, Gustavus, you are of absolutely no position to demand an intervention for anyone.
Correction. Adventurers get quests. We're investigators. We get jobs.
Then we better get paid.
I'm not sure that... Like, I feel like Seeker was congratulating himself, but I'm not sure that that's actually a positive thing, that all the gods size you up like, there's an easy mark. That the gnome hoe over there with the fishnet stockings. Like, That's a
Brooke,
that's a
There's
$2
a reason why Seeker wants to go to the complaints department.
that's a
Brooke,
$2
Brooke-
question if I've ever seen one.
Brick Road, listen, you can't just follow up no buttocks with gnome and fishnet stockings. Like, you can't do that, Brick Road. That's against terms of service on Twitch, dude.
It's illegal.
Seriously.
Does Seeker wear fishnet stockings?
No. You can't pull them off.
Can't bet that way. Going into
I would
the
like
actual temple, the inside of the temple is a relatively straightforward congregation area. Most of the construction on the inside is wood, and you see rows of pews where people could come and receive mass. At the far end, there's a lectern behind which is a large glass structure. In Dunfoss, you would say it was a stained glass window, but in Sigil, there's no point to having a window because it would just get caked with grime within 10 seconds. So instead, what they've done is they have something that's kind of a mix between a statue and a stained glass window, where they've commissioned this large statue of one of the icons of Ostrom, in this case, 2 barracudas wrapped around a trident. In beautiful, beautiful form. Multicolored glass. The floor of the structure is made up with white and blue tiles, with white tiles around the edges and the blue tiles going up the center of the room in between all of the pews, leading up to the lectern at the end. And it kind of does look like the ocean washing in from either side.
There any acolytes or priests in the room currently?
Stepping in the chamber, there are a couple worshippers sitting in the pews that seem to be deep in prayer. At the front of the room, up at the lectern, speaking with one of the parishioners, is another one of these goat men, who looks very similar to the one out front, giving out gulps of water. Except he has much, much brighter hair. He looks younger, and he's got this glorious golden hair that trickles down over the curled horns on his head and down along his neck and back. What's next?
Let's head over to him and see if it looks like that conversation is going to take a while.
As he sees the 5 of you approaching, you see him. He's offering some kind of comfort or prayer to one of the parishioners, but it doesn't seem that demanding of his attention. And he clops over to you,
Just like that, yes.
wishes you good morning.
Good morning. We're here to speak with Yashnars on account of a mission from a high priest of Ostrom.
And he looks the 5 of you over, and he seems to be scanning for weapons. He sees empty scabbards and empty holsters and whatnot. He tells you that he imagines Yashnars has finished his breakfast by this time in the morning, but he's not certain that he's receiving visitors. Would your names be known to him?
I doubt
Likely
it,
not.
Not unless our reputation has preceded us.
Which I doubt it has.
He asks if the name of the priest you represent would be known to him.
Possibly. From what we can tell, our prime is a relatively well-established one of Osprom's, and Seeker will give the high priest name and Trinus.
Okay. He tells you he'll relay the information and see if Yashnars is feeling well enough to receive visitors. And then he goes to deal with... He's not sick as such, it's just that he's very, very old.
I understand.
Lucius moves over to one of the pews and takes a seat.
Okay. He explains that Yashnars is one of the is of a prime material demi-human race, one of the ones that is not granted the gift of longevity. And he has lived far beyond his a typical mortal lifespan for his kind.
Has he been preserved by Osprey?
Oh, almost assuredly. His devotion and faith has seen him to such a great age.
I would have expected to have just been pure spite. I don't say that in character.
I would hope not.
Just
And he vanishes from your sight, leaving you guys here in the.
And Connor leans over to Gus and kind of whispers in his ear. So, do you think he's like a centaur? He's like a part goat.
I don't see any problem with that. I mean, minotaurs exist, right? On Trinus.
Right. Where
Not
does
that you're
Sen and
aware.
Mino come from? We should be able to put this together.
Minotaurs don't exist on Trennis the way they exist in, say, Theros.
I just was wondering.
Like, you probably
They
heard a
exist as, like, a
legend of
monster.
the Minotaur that lives in the middle of a labyrinth, sure.
No, I mean like. Never mind. Anyway,
Even centaurs would be considered. First of all, Connor would not like centaurs at all because they're
Yeah,
sylvan
that's kind of where I'm going
creatures.
with this.
Centaurs back on where you guys live. There's a great wood up to the north of Dunfoss, and that place would have a lot of centaur civilizations in it. You would think a lot of centaur villages. There probably aren't any living in Dunfoss though.
Like I said, maybe these goatmen are just native to this city.
Yeah, when you think about it, considering what we've heard, our plane is only connected to like 2 planes, and that's the Fey one and the other one, right? Whereas
Yeah, the
this
Darky
place is
The
connected to
Shadowfell.
like tons of them. So honestly, this is the least Fey place that we've ever been.
statistically,
It's so yeah, statistically, it's diluted.
the least fey place you'll ever go.
Does Connor find that reassuring?
No, Connor finds that bullshit.
Look, I don't know about you guys, but I've been keeping my eye out as we go around. Just professional curiosity, knowledge of alchemy, and whatnot. And I can tell you, the only thing that's growing here natively is that razorvine stuff. Everything else is imported for sure. So I would expect that if there are native life forms on this place, I wouldn't expect them to be not quite that, And kind of looks at the like,
Pleasant.
yeah, like sharper, spikier, angular. It seems more like they modeled the entire city after that vine rather than the other way around.
I think we should get some seeds for that vine. I think it'd be amusing.
Oh, you have razorvine back home. It doesn't grow as prolifically as it does here, but
Yeah,
I was
they've
gonna
got
say,
some in
like,
Blue Worm.
That's like.
It's
Yeah,
an
let's say
invasive
it's a
species.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
why it's a kudzu. That'll be really great.
It's a deeply invasive species.
after a few
It's
moments,
actually not native from here, but it looks like it's the only thing that's growing here naturally. Everything else I've seen has been transplanted.
After a few moments, the goat man returns, and he seems in good spirits, and like he's able to give you guys good news that he wasn't expecting to be able to give. But he tells you that Yashnars will receive you.
Pleasant
That is
surprise,
good
thank
news.
you.
How should we refer to him? Is it like High Priest or
By name is his preference.
Yashnars?
His
Great.
Eminence? Okay. So not his
Love to
Eminence,
hear it.
got it.
Straight shooter.
He leads you upstairs and you can tell that this building was renovated into a temple, but the upstairs quarters are much more similar to what you'd expect of like the upstairs of a storefront or a shop of some kind. So you've got like 2 central hallways making an L shape with the stairs at the intersection of the 2, and then doors off to either side of the L shape into rooms that sit in the middle. So they could have living areas, storerooms, and living quarters and whatnot. And it's very cramped up here because there are a few more acolytes tending to business. The chamber that the goat man leads you to is no larger than any of the others. He tells you that Yashnars is very hard of hearing, so he would implore you to speak plainly, clearly, and loudly, and tells you that his preferred voice is that of the common tongue that we're speaking now.
Should I just send him a message when I'm talking to him? He'd be able to hear it as though it was just coming right next to him.
He tells you that Yashnars is mistrustful of such magical messaging.
All right.
The room that Yashnars is in, I mean, you can tell this is a room where it's essentially a hospice care situation. This is the last room this man is going to be in his life. And so he has, most of it is dominated by the bed that he probably spends most of his time in. But when you enter, he's sitting in a wooden chair next to the bed, and doing so at great pain. But sitting in the chair and wearing the same vestments that you've seen is the oldest orc you've ever seen. In fact, I don't think any of you have ever met an orc that probably wasn't trying to murder you immediately. Orcs are very pointedly not citizens of Dunfoss. And, in fact, one of Dunfoss's claims to fame is they have run all of the orcish tribes either north out of their territory or east beyond the mountains. Suffice it to say, you were not expecting an orc, of all things.
I'm just glad he wasn't an elf.
Is
We've already had one trouble with Connor.
What does Connor think of orcs?
No problem with orcs.
Down
Kind
the
of respects
list.
them.
Okay.
Kind of respects them because they're kind of blunt.
By which you mean they hit you with blunt objects.
Of course.
And try to rape your corpse.
So, standing next to him is a tall, spindly woman. Again, wearing vestments. And she has... she's not leaning her weight on it, but holding it, she has an ivory staff that runs all the way to the floor. She's holding the top of it. You can tell that she's keeping a fairly respectable posture, and she's regarding you very, very skeptically as you come in. She has very pale skin that you can't tell if it's cream colored or maybe a very light ashen colored. And there's something about her eyes that you mislike. In fact, I will allow an Arcana check from anybody who would like to detect magic.
Yeah, I'll go for it.
Yep.
Love Arcana.
Love Arcanoid?
A 9 on Alex.
Mm-hmm.
That is a 18 from Seeker.
Yeah, we're looking for a 10 or better here. So, Alex,
Lucius has it.
there's just something bizarre about her eyes that you don't like. Like, you're trying to figure out... You can't really tell what color they are. It's very weird. Those of you who got 10 or better, you can detect the illusion magic. She's trying to hide something about her eyes as part of her physical appearance. When you enter Yashnar's... well, the goat man leaves you in the room and closes the door behind. And Yashnar speaks up. And he's speaking in common, but he's speaking in a very hoarse and gravelly voice. And you can tell that he's doing so with some pain. He tells you that he would hear your names first, and then he would hear your business, but he will hear both gladly.
The Seeker in the Dark.
Lucius Gudok.
Alex Flintraker.
Gustavus Heartborn.
Connor.
And he sits for a moment. You see him crane his head upward. And you can tell that his eyes are closed. And he shifts in his seat a little bit. And he asks, "What do you seek in the dark?"
At the moment, the Quadrashi Fork.
Make a insight check.
Uh-huh.
He says, as though he didn't quite hear you, he asks, "Where is the darkest place you have visited?"
That's a 12.
Okay.
And Seeker, thinks for a moment,
Mm-hmm.
and then says, "Well, we were in the cave of a dragon once, and that was pretty dark."
No, the 12 on insight.
Yeah.
Okay. He says, or he asks rather, and did you find it there?
The fork? No. I did find the lives of my companions, which was pretty good. Although I since misplaced one of them.
He asks if this place, and he holds his hands out, referencing to the room you're standing in. Is it darker than this dragon's hole?
Doesn't look it. Why?
So, in truth, you are the seeker in the temple.
Suppose that's true for the moment. Although given that I don't know where the fork is, I'm in the dark on that matter.
He asks, what is this fork you're seeking?
And Seeker just closes his eyes for a moment and then opens them and then says, "The High Priest of Trennis sent us to find," and then he describes it and says, "He said it was a relic of Osbrum that was brought here ages back, and he wants us to return it."
He tells you there is a piece of art in the icon downstairs, but it is no relic. Perhaps this is the fork you are seeking?
Unlikely. We were told it was a highly magical artifact.
Told that it was previously in the possession of a woman.
Yeah, do we get her name?
I don't think
No,
he
I
did
don't
give
think
us
we
her
did.
name. Like,
Gus, make an insight check.
oh, that was. You know what?
What?
I'm gonna use 4 blips.
Oh. Oh.
4 blips on insight. Now we're talking.
Yes,
Burning up
we
the
have enough
dice.
experience points. That's how that works, right, Destil?
No, that's gold. We never have enough EXP.
You mentioned that you were told that the fork was in the possession of a woman. When you mention this line of inquiry, almost imperceptibly, you get a very unfriendly glance from the woman standing next to Yashnar's. She stands very stoically, and she doesn't glare at you or make a face or anything, but you can definitely tell that this woman is looking down at you unfavorably, hearing this part of the conversation.
Gus is gonna look at her and go, "Yes, do you have something to add to the conversation?"
Yashnars holds up his hand, says, "Surely it is impolite to address the acolyte when the priest is in the room."
Well, your acolyte is kind of staring angrily at me.
He motions to the door and says, "You are free to go, if you mislike my acolytes." You may go from this place in peace. You will not be followed, I assure you. I can tell by the silence that there are no footfalls, which means you will hold your tongue. I will hear you speak, but I will not hear you speak ill. Are we clear?
I understand.
Perfectly.
He
Connor
smiles,
raises an eyebrow.
leans back in his chair. Says, "Then we were speaking about a woman with a fork. Perhaps you are looking for a restaurant."
I've been assured it's not a dinner fork. Repeatedly.
Seeker looks up at him and then says, "When we were speaking with the High Priest of Osbrum, he seemed fond of treasure hunters. Is that true of you as well?"
He smiles broadly and tells you that he has been on many treasure hunts in his day. It is the nature of Osprim to find pretty things and claim them and hold them through one's own power. It is the nature of the sea.
Is the Kodrashi Fork currently held by Osprim?
He tells you that Osprim alone would know. Perhaps she eats her dinner with it.
And Seeker kind of rolls his shoulders and then says, "That's true. Well, then perhaps there's another treasure that we could go look for. Have you heard of any?"
He shakes his head sadly and tells you that his treasure-seeking days are over, and that now the things that would bring him peace and comfort are not material things.
What are they?
And he says, "Nothing that you carry, friend. For you carry another in your head and heart."
And Seeker nods and then says, "I do, however, have this task."
To live a mortal life is to see in a line the tasks placed before us, placed by patrons, kings, and captains, friends, family, business partners, dragons, sometimes.
So Connor has tuned out the conversation completely.
Okay.
He's now just focusing on the woman.
And you can tell that she's made note of this.
Okay.
Like, she can tell that Connor is regarding her. The old man
We can't
continues.
Oh, sorry.
And continues his train of thought. And says that with each day that he adds in age, the older he gets, the more and more he sees the tasks behind him left undone. Would that he could go back and complete them all now.
If we can't use your assistance to find the fork, then maybe we could use it to find the woman then. Do you know of a priestess of Osprim who passed through here?
He says that he has seen a woman in his dreams of late, more and more as the days go by. From his time as a very young man, before he came to Sigil, before he met the priestess of Osprim. A champion who waged war in Osprim's name. And he seems wistful in his recollection. He says, I see now that to have fought and died by her side would have been a glory, rather than to waste away in this gray and decaying place.
Perhaps the dream is being sent by Osprim. It seems odd that you would begin dreaming of her and then we would arrive, asking
No.
questions.
On the contrary, the dreams are sent by Acheron, the endless battlefields, the call of bloodshed that has claimed so many millions of my people. For a time, I thought I had escaped it, but it calls me yet. It calls her too, this champion. Perhaps it has claimed her. I don't know how long it's been.
Was that a literal call to Acheron or more of a figurative?
He says he knows doors to Acheron, if he wished to travel there. Make a religion check at disadvantage. Because not only are you not learned in the Temple of Osprim, but you also don't really know a lot about how people regard religion yet in Sigil, being here only 2 days.
It's enough time to be in.
That is a 11.
Seeker's like, I don't know what you know about Sigil. I'm an expert. It really just sounds like the ramblings of an old man with many, many regrets. You can't tell if he's trying to impart some kind of hidden wisdom onto you, or if he's just decided to unload his woes today.
I mean, for what it's worth, yeah, Schnars, I like your temple a lot better than the one in Trinus.
He thanks you for the kind words.
One in Trinus is a little too glittery.
So, you're... Never mind. Sorry. My words disappeared again.
So what was the last battlefield you saw this priestess go to? Maybe we can follow her footsteps.
He said if you walked through 1,000 doors to 1,000 different planes, you would not find her. He imagines now she is beyond reach.
Did she have any companions there? Maybe we can track one of them down.
He leans back in his chair again, and he makes a pained expression. He says, I believe now I will take sleep for a moment. If you will forgive me, I have enjoyed speaking with you all.
By all means.
And only with the woman's help is he able to stand, and she moves him over the 2 steps to his bed. And very quickly after he's down, she begins ushering you out of the room.
Do I get the sense that he was trying to dodge conversation when we brought up this woman's companions?
Make an insight check.
14.
You get the sense that he was in a great deal of pain and immediately needed to lay down.
Okay.
The tall woman closes the door softly behind her, so it's now just you and her in the hallway. His room is at the far end of one of the 2 hallways forming this L shape. So on the far end of the hallway, you've got the stairs leading down to the first floor. She tells you, and she speaks Lucius.
Yes.
She's speaking common, but she's speaking an inflection that has clear infernal influence to it.
Mm-hmm.
And she says, the temple would beg your forgiveness that you were subjected to the old priest's ramblings.
No, it's quite all right, but we still do need to see whatever information we can get from him. Would it be possible for us to wait on the premises until he is in more of a state to continue our conversation?
She says that she regrets to inform you that she doesn't imagine he will be much help to you at all. He rambles a lot these days, and sometimes during the week he will take visitors to hear his old stories.
I get the sense he enjoys telling these stories, though, and if this woman arrived with this incredibly powerful artifact, surely that's a story.
The woman
Have
he's
you
speaking
heard
of
it in
is
the past?
the woman he's speaking of is my mother, the founder
Oh.
of this temple. She has not been here in many, many years.
I see.
Yashnars holds out hope that she will return here one day and relieve him, but this is not a thing that he can count on.
I take it from your tone that you don't see that as a possibility.
She says, if my mother could be counted on for anything, it is to be counted on for nothing. To
Then
her,
do you know what she might have done with this staff? This fork?
Fork.
she says, you have to understand. To my mother, Osprey was a pretty object, a fleeting fancy, something that she latched onto for but a moment in time, and then discarded when she was done with it. This is a thing that she has done to many things and many people throughout her life. She exists to tear things down with no thoughts to building anything in its place.
But you said that she built this temple, yes?
It amused her to do so at one point. And yes, she did have the relic that you've heard of at one point.
Dude.
Well,
This
this
is-
means that we likely won't have to wrest it from her.
She says, I wonder if you will meet me outside of the temple. In a setting more befitting of a casual conversation.
Here, there's a tavern outside. We had someone waiting for us there. We could meet there.
She says that she will drink there with you at Anti-Peak.
Very well.
Before we go, I want to ask her. It's like this is not really directly related to our reason for being here, but I am curious. So the man that sent us here says that he has sent a bunch of people here, and that none of them have returned. Do you know what happened to any of the other acolytes and things that he's been sending through?
She tells you that Sigil is a dangerous place, so she imagines that some of them have died on the streets of Sigil, others have found fortunes elsewhere. It is the nature of the Outer Planes to tempt mortals into a lifetime of seeking wealth, treasure, philosophy, meaning. They tend to get lost.
All four of those things sound like purviews of Osprey.
Okay.
All right, we'll talk to you then at the tavern.
Okay. And as you guys head back downstairs, at this point, the two barriers and the large orange man with the eye patch have come back inside and are tending to some parishioners. And none of them pay you much attention, just a polite nod as you pass, unless you're going to start setting fires.
No, really rather not.
I'll ask one of them for directions to the local tavern.
I mean,
I'm not wasting my sendings. You are very free with my spell slots.
Yeah, you're given direction to just a near little hole in the wall, gut rot kind of place.
Yep, sounds like just the place we'll find him.
Are there any other structures or buildings of note in the neighborhood as well besides this tavern?
Oh, there are hundreds and hundreds.
Did
Really,
we get her name?
you have to be more specific about what you're looking for, though.
I want you to list them all, Brick Road.
Yeah, okay.
Did we get her name?
No, you didn't.
No.
Connor would ask for her name.
Well, I mean, you guys are downstairs now. You've left her.
Oh, okay.
You should
All
probably ask for her name during the conversation. She didn't ask for yours either.
I was.
To be fair, she got ours.
That's true.
Let's ask one of the other acolytes who it was we talked to on the way
We'll
out.
ask one of the goat men what
Okay.
her name was.
She's called Patience.
Okay.
Alright, let's go through our 16-hour recheck out of our weapons.
Going back outside. It only takes a few moments. The weapons are passed through. Gus, as she passes the halberd through, she unties the length of thick red twine.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Everything's in place. Nothing was set aside. The crowds out front have now since dispersed. There are one or two unseemly looking people trying to lick the moisture off of the bars, but they don't have the skills required to actually get nourishment from them.
Does that twine prevent teleportation? Seeker asks as she untwines the twine.
She says that it prevents weapons from being recalled.
Could you use it on a person?
She shrugs and tells you you'd have to ask the wizards they got it from.
Where'd you get it?
She says it was issued to her by the temple.
This is what comes of asking clerics questions.
It's not the purview of this acolyte.
Yeah,
to
this
give
is
secret magic items.
This is the low rank of the temple. She. It's like going to McDonald's and asking one of the kids how the ice cream machine works.
And then
The
they just
answer
respond
is-
it doesn't.
Yeah.
It doesn't.
Yeah, I mean, you're right.
Okay, bad example. Are you guys doing anything between now and Anti-Peak?
Drinking.
It's like keeping an eye on Gus while he's drinking.
So is that no? We're not doing anything important between now and anti-peak.
Are have the people in front of the temple dispersed at all, or is it still like a crowd of 100?
There's
Still
still
going
a
out.
thick crowd, but this is just—it's because you're in the slums, and everything's really pressed close together. I mean, you had that impression when you were in the lower ward yesterday, but now. But it's not this massive humanity all pressing forward to this gate. Everybody who was in that crowd has received water, so that the massive crowd is dispersed, and now the street is no longer clogged with them.
Does the gate look like it's diminished at all from them pulling moisture off of it?
No, it looks like magical icy bars giving off an aura of cold.
Kind
Lucius is trying to attempting cultural exchange through the time-honored tradition of shooting the breeze over cards.
Oh yeah, are you gambling at this time?
Yeah,
Gambling coppers.
basically.
Make a gambling check.
Let's see,
You have your gambling tool set, or whatever
I
it is.
do.
And you can... Are you playing by the rules, or are you cheating?
Yeah, I'll play by the rules for now. Sure.
Okay.
15.
A 15?
Yep.
Okay. And the rules of the game, of the cards, you don't completely understand. It's an unfamiliar place. They seem to change a lot. The denizens at the table definitely change a lot. But over the course of the game, you do manage to keep most of your coppers. So you do manage to about break even.
Okay.
So at this point, we're going to take a 15-minute break. I will pull down the curtains for
The non-Elizabeth.